yeah, that's the ultimate position right there and then.
Let me see. Yeah, I just want to make sure that like we have enough juice because I'm gonna plug it. Sorry, Kev. It's just that's the only glasses that I have that have strength tonight around me. So I have
What
to
do
have
you
sunglasses to see
what
what
do
I'm
you
doing.
think it is between Toronto and Montreal? Like there's a difference. I feel like when you there's a if there was a border, I know the border between obviously the provinces, Ontario and
You
Quebec, but
think?
there's definitely
It's just different. Like,
I'm a Montreal native. I moved to Toronto when I was, I don't know, 13 and a half or something like that, and then I felt the difference. Like I felt that there was a culture shock. That was one of the first things that I definitely felt. Knowing that we're getting together right now at this hour of the night, for example, to go and record a session of Utility Room, and it's like it's a good time in Montreal right now. It's like you guys have just finished dinner, you're thinking about dessert, where to go for drinks after that, and
I actually
Toronto, it
just, yeah, it's funny because, yeah, it's true. Like, even like the kids here, like, I know, anyway, my kids, our kids are like, they have the weirdest schedule ever. They're teenager and like this, and I can tell them what time to go to bed. Like, I mean, they grew up with me walking in the morning at 7 a.m. with sunglasses, like, and making omelette, before they go to school,
right,
like a fucking like rock and roll star.
of course, but you kind of are, aren't you?
You know what I'm like? I told my friend the other night. I'm like, with age, what's funny? I'm like becoming a caricature of myself.
How's that? How do
I'm
you?
just becoming like kind of a, no, like not in a bad way. It's just
No, no, I.
like everything, like kind of you work and you want when you're younger and you're trying to be or you want to be or you don't want stuff you don't want to be. You get to an age that you're kind of okay with it. You don't give up, but you're like, okay, this that's it. Like, I don't. You don't feel that you need to justify yourself anymore.
The rage against the machine becomes a finding your place within the machine.
Yeah. So like, it's not only that. Is at some point it's like you have to accept. When you work in a field that we work, you have to accept at some point there'll be. You depend on how much. I don't know. It's weird. Do you see me now?
Oh, I see you great. I can hear you fine.
Is the light good enough?
Yeah, yeah, you look super handsome.
Good. uh, yeah, I went actually took the time to shave before before talking to you because like
This is
I
our
looked myself
first this is our
in the
first
mirror and I
date.
was like, I know it's a first.
It's our first date together, right?
I took the time because I was like, you know what? Like I spend like my day like I'm working on a few projects at the same time, and at some point when you're like just spinning, like you can't grab anything. You have tons of shit to do, but like there's too much information. Like I kind of live into that these days. I live in projects. I don't know if it's also because of pandemic. Through the pandemic, like there was not much to. I mean, in my field, there was nothing to do, so I just had to be creative. I didn't have like deadline and stuff like that. So the fact that now like contracts are starting again and like this kind of deadlines and people say like it's not just I could do this or I could do that or I could do this I could do that. At some point, people are like, yeah, we could do anything and every of it, but like which one you want to do. Often people wait after me to decide, not to decide, but to bring ideas together. And in the work that I do aside from music, which is super related, we can talk about it if you want.
Well, I think we absolutely should. It's probably a great time for me to let everyone know, how, why, who, where, when, how. For
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now's the time.
decades,
Okay, let's go. Like the real introduction.
for decades, this Montreal dance floor and DJ ambassador has delighted in many ways, from curation, DJ mixes, opera, remixes, fashion shows, and one of the most popular hangout and vinyl shopping experiences of the city with Inbeat. It's with giant pleasure that we welcome to the Utility Room Christian Pronovost.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing?
Welcome to the show.
like I told you before, sorry for the sunglasses, but it's the only one that I have like strength. And if I don't, like it just feels weird of looking at you and not seeing your face. So I need kind of to see you.
I'm keeping it dark, and you've got the sunglasses on together right now. If we're using our imagination,
Yeah,
we're in a club.
fully.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
not so
Right.
loud, so we're in a more chill space area of the club, and we're gonna catch up.
Good. Let's go.
Was there a bittersweet vibe with Inbeat
No,
when
listen.
it closed?
Well, no, listen. I opened the shop in '87. It was a total accident because I never intend to open a record store. My background is in, apart from being a DJ, I studied in media and broadcasting and communication, journalism, stuff like that. But I did a certificate in Algonquin College in Ottawa, specialized in broadcasting. So, I worked for CBC in French, Radio Canada, and I worked for Sequoia FM. Like I was doing research, musical research, and a friend of mine, and I was traveling a lot. I was going to New York back and forth. And, at some point, you always, DJ, not that the DJ career was in my card, but like, I felt like I was fresh out of university. I was like, okay, I have like, freelance gig at CBC. I have a freelance gig here. I'm writing for a magazine. Things are happening. I'm going to see shows. I'm getting in the loop of the media thing. And then part of that was keeping information, and to keep information and musical information, you go buy a magazine, you go buy and go listen to a couple new releases and buy a couple records, because I was maintaining a record collection, not as heavily as when I was DJing, but that part I didn't know like if I would go back to DJ or not, but it wasn't the current thing. And one of the store I used to go at some point changed owners, and the new owners was really, really young, and I was fairly young. I think I was 23, but he was something like 18 years old. So, obviously, like it clicked. I mean, we start like exchanging ideas, and then eventually like going out after he closed the store, et cetera, et cetera. And at some point, he asked me, he's like, "Hey, would you like to work on Saturday?" And I was like, sure, I never thought about it, but I was a freelancer. I wasn't really rich. I didn't have much money, you know there was some exciting music happening, and I was like, sure, why not? Like, but at the same time, like, we're going back and forth to New York still, and that's when we got exposed to house music for the first time. And I remember, like, it really, like, it clicked right away the first time I heard, I don't know, No Way Back, Adonis. I mean, Master C and J, When You Love Me, When You Dub Me, Liz Torres, some of that stuff, some of the tracks record. I mean, right away, like I knew, I was like, this is the same way than when I heard the first new wave song in '79. I was like, oh my God, that's it. It's the way.
Captured,
Yeah, yeah. It's
captured.
like the sky is opening, there's the beam of light coming on me, to like you've been enlightened, like really. So right away it kind of made sense. I was super excited, like, I was working at the store, at the shop, my friend, but all this happened within 6 months. We end up like, we end up going to Chicago. I mean, we met everybody. We came back to Montreal. Like, I remember, like, we booked with some other people. We booked a huge house music fest in '87 when house music was totally underground. Back in the days at Metropolis, which is a huge place, and we throw the first house music fest. We had like Marshall Jefferson, we had like Keith Nunley, we have Master CNG, we had Liz Torres, we had uh, GM Silk, we had the guy that sings "Move Your Body and Ride the Rhythm." We had all those people, and I have pictures still. Like, and now even those guys, I think that it's at a point where I don't think, or they were just starting to travel in the UK. They never been really outside of Chicago, and we booked them as boom, 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 like 6, 7 act, like, and it happened super fast. We call a couple labels, we call a guy, the guy called a guy, and he put us in touch with Marshall Jefferson, and I think it's Marshall that kind of coordinate everything. Anyway, so but within 6 months, like I was the owner of the store. Like just within the guy that had it, like, I mean, I think they lost a lot of money because he had a partner. Both of the guys were adorable, by the way. Like they were like sweet guys, cute, sweet, fresh. And even if I was 23, I can remember, like, I saw them as being much younger because they're like 18 or 19, and like, I mean, we went out everywhere. Like we went to New York. We had a lot of fun. And I think like for them, it was more the lifestyle and everything than running a business. And me, I was really drastic at that point. I was like, okay, only 100% house music, everything else. And remember, like there was still freestyle, there was still hip hop, there was still dance, there was still all that stuff. I threw everything out of the store. And we had a big clientele of like everybody, like mobile disco clubs, strip clubs, everything. We used to sell 45 behind the counter for strippers. Strippers used to come and buy their 45s for them at the store. It's
The idea
unbelievable.
that if you were approaching it with the idea, the mindset that operating a brick and mortar operation to sell
Yeah.
music and being focused on just one genre and this is clearly not, I'm not asking in a complaining fashion, but
Yeah.
was this not a concern that you'd be alienating just a bunch of strangers that maybe would have walked off the street to pick up some music that they would like? Did you not
I
want to
mean, the
have a
funny
section in the
thing,
back of the
yeah,
store that been like, here?
yeah, I know. The funny thing is like I think for me it was not just a music thing. It was a statement. I mean, I paint the entire store black and like the entire windows black, and I just wrote on white behind the black, "This is house," and we had that for 6 months. You walk in the store, it was pitch black. It was like it was a dungeon. I mean, it was great marketing thing, but it was. I mean, I don't know. It was kind of pop art because obviously, like my background is kind of like multimedia stuff like that. So for me, it was kind of an installation. It was a big statement. It was like the type of things that people do, comme les garçons, a special store will do that. You see it today, like all that stuff. But all that stuff anyway comes from the '80s. It wasn't even me inventing something. It's stuff that I've seen in New York. A store would renovate. They would like put the entire building in plywood, paint everything, make it super shiny, and say like and have a message, stuff like that. I was influenced by that, by commercial art, I guess, and I thought that was pretty cool. And honestly, not that I didn't give a shit about other DJs because I had a huge respect for DJs. That's the other thing. I love people, and I have a huge respect for professional, and but I believe that I could convert them. Had that visionary thing happening. I was pretty. I mean, I'm still pretty crazy, but
Convert
like,
convert to house music.
yeah.
Okay.
And it took. I mean, obviously, like there's like I was downtown Montreal. The first store was downtown Montreal. We had like 4 or 5 store. We had 5 store around the radius of 1 kilometers. So people could go anywhere, but it was so strong. All the other guys from the record, every guys from every record store used to come to my store to buy music because they would be bugging out. I mean, we used to go to New York after that. That's what we start. We start going to New York every week, buy the music straight up in New York, come back with it. And often we used to stop in record store and buy whatever we could not find. So I would buy, like I would walk in on a Monday and I would ask the guy, oh, what is this? Oh, Janet Thomas, Shake Your Body. Like, I'm like, okay, I need 10 copies. And it would be like, oh man, I only have a box of 25. I'm like, okay, give me 7. Like he would sell me 7. But we paid super cheap. I mean, we were paying the records like $3 US.
I
Coming
was
back,
about
we
to say,
never.
was the exchange never a concern because you're
I
you're
don't know.
bringing.
Like I made money in the U.S. I had the U.S. money, to spend. So for me, it kind of all revolved. Like, it's funny because I didn't have money, but I went to New York. I did. I had American money. I remember just I had American money at some point. I had couple $1,000, I think, American money. Back in '87, you go a long way, couple $1,000 buying vinyl. And the markup was fantastic. I mean, we bought the stuff at 2.99. We sold it at 9.99. You'll tell me, the exchange rate was really bad back then, very bad. And like if you, and after that, because eventually I became legit. I mean, at some point I had drivers and people going to pick up records from me in New York, or just eventually distributors send it upstate New York, and I used to drive upstate. That's how we operated after. Like, we were like kind of ghetto or like DIY for about 4 or 5 years. No, not even 3 years. And after that, we moved the shop. We did a bunch of things, and it's the same thing. When I moved the shop, I was downtown Montreal, crazy prime location with a good lease, with good price. I broke the lease and I said, forget about it. We're going in the gay village. And the gay village was dead zone daytime. There was nobody there.
So why the move?
Again, like, I was in New York. I was really like, like I lived in East Village in New York. For me, East Village was kind of the gay neighborhood. And it was very cool. And I like, that's where my friend hang out, and that's where we hang out. And I came to Montreal, and Montreal actually, the gay village is the East Village. They used to call it the East, not the East Village, and eventually became the gay village, and officially now it's the village gay, the gay village, But so for me, it was East Village. So the business card was Montreal East Village. People were, what are you talking about? And then people start calling it the East Village. And 15 years later, it became the East Village.
Do you believe that this is a big reason why that it happened? Is
I don't
because you
know,
were
like,
you were pivoting the
like,
store and the neighborhood
well,
as a name, and then the name caught on. I'm heading to in
I
the
think
East
it's,
Village.
well, people call it, I mean, back in the days, it was the East. We're going the village, East Village. And then when the gay
Yeah,
village happened, people would just call it the gay village. But then when I moved there, like, I remember the East thing. So I decided to kind of like jump on the New York thing. Like, I'm gonna say the East Village, so people gonna get that it's the gay village and it's in the East, but it's kind of very kind of a wink at New York,
fantastic.
Manhattan, So that was kind of the idea, and also like the decor, like I was very big, like the entire ceiling of the store, like the second store when I moved there, the second ceiling was like the second floor ceiling was all like hanging out, like kind of like army style camouflage, Vietnam, like Saigon, 1919. uh, and the wall were like, I decided to put cement, concrete. So I put big slab of concrete on an office. I was on the second floor and it was an office. And I put like concrete floor, like, but on kind of Jeep rock, like, like I was mad really. And we went in the old port and we got those cases, those wood cases export, and I make record bins on them, like around them. So all the decor was a kind of, the wall were like, I cut the case, it was half case illusion. The counter was on those. I mean, for me, all that thing, the experience was super interesting. And I brought a crazy loud sound system. And DJ start. I mean, I knew a lot of DJs from the other store a bit, but also we're doing the tour of the club. People kind of knew me a bit as a DJ, even if I wasn't really established as a DJ. People knew me a bit as a DJ, like, and people start coming, and it was just people. The response was amazing, like, because, well, back, 1 year later, house was like, there was a buzz about it. People were trying to catch up on it, but also the other thing that was super important that I did is I had the New York connection down the pocket. But for me, I knew that was easy for the other store to catch up. So what I did, the first thing I did, I made a contact in the UK, and I started importing in the UK straight from the UK every week, like 3-4 boxes. And that's pre-fax. So you could not communicate. You had to call people long distance, and the communication was so bad and they didn't play music. So at some
You
point, they
were
were
not
sending
getting
you
samples
telex.
over the phone calls. There was no idea.
No,
So how were you shopping? You were shopping strictly based off of label and producer name.
and back then the producer thing was still very more underground. I mean, I was buying music, I was buying all the magazine, I was talking to the guy to the UK. The guy, what they did though, they hooked me up every month, every week. They sent me that, but also they made sure that I was on the DJ list of all the cool labels. So like, they sent in every box that I got, I had the promo of stuff that would come up in a couple of weeks. So like, not only I knew what was happening, I had like crazy promos that even guys in New York didn't have. Like I had this stuff like incredible. So we're talking about 87, 88 when Rare Groove was really big. Can you hear me?
Yeah, is it still in your headphones or did your
Hold on a
headphone
second.
die out? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Okay.
Sort of.
Now we're
Oh,
back.
now I can hear you.
So I have to change. It's gonna be weird.
Yeah.
So
You're,
like at
you're,
the same time, like at the same time, there's between 586, 87, like whatever that was that big of like James Brown, like all the funky drummer stuff. And then in the UK it was huge, it was, and also it was weird because it was based on people digging in secondhand record. But then like majors start catching up and people were releasing like obscure stuff and James Brown and Bobby Bird and Collins and stuff like that. But at the same time that was happening, house started happening in the UK, and it was kind of that thing because in the UK, and especially in London, London was really about the rare groove and fashion and everything. So, all the soul boys and everybody like doing that stuff, and jazz dance was starting a bit before I said jazz. The house guys, like it sounded like they didn't know what to make of it because there was less. So they had like the gay clubs and the white kind of more trash clubs were playing high energy, and then the cool clubs were playing rare groove, and it was kind of post 80s, I get post the entire new romantic phase. Out of that, rare groove came because new romantic was really based also about revivaling and secondhand record and stuff like that. A lot of it was vintage record, part of the new romantic movement. So I think when house happened, like people at first, it took a while to catch up in London, especially in London, and that's why like Manchester was happening, acid house was already starting to happen. So when when London caught up with house, at the same time the UK was like going. 88 was Summer of Love, acid house all over. I used to get acid record like 50 different new acid track every week. like like and I get that at the store and I paid for it, so I had to sell it. So DJ would come in and like, trust me, my skill of salesperson, I was like brutal. I was like kind of, you want this, but you need to buy this. And it was really like
you're
yeah,
you're you're
it
hitting
was
something right now that I think is super crazy. There's a fun meta and irony, and you were the main purchaser for the vinyl being sold inside the store. You had all the DJs coming and
yeah,
shopping at the store, filling up their bags and boxes and bins to play the music
yeah,
out at the clubs and make the mixtapes with the music that you were giving them. You were
yeah,
DJing the DJs.
yeah, totally, totally,
100%.
100%. And like, and but also I'll honestly, I'm very honest with you. I always done it in a how can I say it? I always saw the potential in every DJs more maybe like, or the potential that they had, or the power that they had. I was really about the DJ and the power. I mean, when I was in New York, I realized things. I realized that DJ not only attract people, because we had that in Montreal, like Toronto, like obviously everywhere, like those places, uh, but like it was never like that's before the flyers, before all that. And when I was in New York, you see the name of the DJ, people going to nights there during the week, this and that, and then you saw the flyers, like people getting paid more, etc., etc. People were actually like playing all over. Like it was the entire freelance. I remember I was so innocent. First of all, my English wasn't far from being perfect. I was far from being bilingual. Uh, and uh, and I could read like on the charts, let's say David Morales, free uh, uh, freelance, and at first I was like freelance, oh wow, because usually they would write Roxy or Danceteria or something like that, and then sometimes it was freelance, and I was like, oh, that's a new club, freelance. Where's freelance? Because and at some point there was a bunch of freelance DJs. I'm like, man, everybody's playing that freelance. Where is freelance? And at some point, one of my friends from New York was laughing at me, obviously, and tried to explain to me. Freelance means when they don't have a fixed place and they play from place to place. They're available for freelancer. So that, I learned something there. Anyway, so I came back to Montreal and and like Toronto, like or anywhere and most of the other places, when you had a job as a DJ in the 80s, 70s, you played 2, 3, 4 nights a week, 5 nights a week, right? A club would have two DJs. That's it. They're resident. There was no such thing as a resident. You're the DJ. There was you, another guy, and if you're open 7 days a week, maybe like 2, 3 guys max. There's no way a DJ would do only one night a week. Impossible. So at the same time that all that was happening, obviously, like the hype around the store, like by default a bit around me, et cetera, because I was always in DJ booth. Like at that point, I was going out 7 days a week, going to see all the DJs. I was making sure that they play the right music. but the pressure. I mean, that when you play in a play, when your friend is playing in a place, he doesn't know you're gonna show up, and then you walk in, you grab a drink, and then he sees you, and you're like, whoa! Like then he starts playing a bit different. He's like, he's not sitting anymore. Like he's actually like pretending like he's really looking for something. Anyway, like I think I had that effect on many DJs. I mean, no, just the fact that I was at the record store, like, and I sold them records, and like, I come in, expecting to hear new music, So there was that, and I guess people saw me, and like owners see me, and people start offering me nights or say, oh, you should. And I remember people like offer me a night, a Sunday night, and after that, he said, like, do you want to do this and that? And I was like, no. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I'm a freelance. Next week, I'm going to do this thing. And he's like, oh, you can't play here and go play over there and play. I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, what are you offering me? He's like, well, you want to play, every week on Sunday. I'm like, okay. And what do I do Monday? And it was also very like I was on the gay scene, so like clubs were open 7 days a week, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday were super busy. So I look at the guy and what do you mean? What I'm gonna do the other day? And he's like, I can give you a bit more money, And I was like, no, I'm a freelance. Like I'm a DJ. I'm free, man. I'm free. I'm an artist. I'm free. I decide where I play. You don't decide where you play. If you want me to play, fine. I'll play. We'll do a party. And also I'll start asking more money, way more money, like double. And there's I was put in a position. I was really lucky first because I had the store, so I didn't really need it. B, uh, I could ask. There's a club in Montreal called, that period of time, like, there's few clubs that were really instrumental into building, especially the house music scene. Business was very popular, like one of them. But at the same time, there was Business. There was kind of a lounge across the street called DeSalvio, run by Bob DeSalvio, which was kind of I mean, it looked like this, it was very kind of Chinese meets this, very eclectic, like, and it was no real dance floor, great sound system, audiophile sound system. And he came to see me one day, and he's like, I'd like you to play for me, And the funny thing is, like, when I met him, he was sitting, I went to a meeting, there was me, the manager, and him, and he had sunglasses like those, actually looking a bit like those, and he looked like this. And I was right there next to him, but he never looked at me. He looked at the other guy. Can you tell him that I'd like to offer him $500 a night? But I was there. He was like a movie scene. The guy was a case. Bobby was crazy. And the entire meeting was that. Like, he would not talk to me. He would not negotiating money with me. But after that, we went to eat together.
You started rocking his dance floor, and he started trusting you.
Yeah, and the funny thing, there was no dance floor. So when I started playing there, it was chaos. And also, always been a DJ that played for the space, very inspired from the space. Anyway, all that to say that Bob, the fact that he offered me $500 when everybody made $125, 150, like when you made 175, you're like, whoa. He offered me 500 cash every week, and I played. I mean, look, and also he had a crazy record collection in the DJ booth. And the DJ booth, then there was no DJ booth. It was kind of a room that you could see the club in the back somewhere there, over there, but you didn't face anybody. It was not. So when the place started working, I mean, he had that. He had three step. You could look. You had to go back down to the three step to play. Then you had to go down 10 feet to grab the record on the wall because it was all like there was no record bin. I mean, it was really chaotic. But like he had a crazy record collection, and out of his he was really good friend. He was all that connection of like Leonard Cohen and stuff like that. So you walk in a place and it's full of flowers, and there was tons of flowers all the time. Very kind of Art Deco. Like there was always a fireplace working. Summer, July, anytime, always a fire. Flower, always smelling incense. Very like very special, very private club. And like there's always like Leonard Cohen playing and stuff like that. But like it was really like it was a great school for me because I knew that I was like at my A game with house music, but I got into his record collection and it was all that and there was Sinatra and this and that. And Bob would be walking in the DJ booth. Even after maybe 1 year working there, the place is really rocking. And he would walk in and he would say, I'm like, what? I mean, the place people like, because like it's not a real pub, so it's kind of organically through, you know, there's sofas. People move the sofas left and right, and move the flowers, and eventually, something's happening, and and uh, and like you would always come in and say, okay, we need to do magic. So the first few times, you find Frank Sinatra, New York, but like you play there every week. So sometimes you play opera, you play this. I mean, so every night there was 3 moments in the night where basically he wanted you to empty the dance floor, break the night, do something else. And that's at the same time that like that's in maybe like 89, 90. So I mean, my career in Montreal at that point is like I'm playing house, like New York, like I'm full on New York classic disco house garage, all that, and I get there and I cannot do that trip, and I have to kind of reinvent myself and play jazz and play. But the good thing is like at the same time that's happening, I'm playing soul, I'm digging, and then acid jazz start popping up, and we start booking band over there and doing acid jazz night and creating acid jazz the acid jazz scene in Montreal. And the guys that actually like I hired to start putting the bands together, they became District Six, and they were a huge, very successful company that like were doing booking, Afrobeat, all that stuff for many years after. It was crazy. Anyway, that was like we went a bit forward. I mean
But
that's
no, it was
another
all,
kind of
all
era because
all wonderful, all of it. You're still so busy with music daily, but not going into the record store. And
yeah, no, but like it's funny.
I was wondering, like, how long did it take for you to get accustomed to
I
that?
mean,
And
look,
like, did you ever have a phantom walk moment? Because all of a sudden you're not at the record store. Did you ever wake up one
oh yeah,
morning
well,
and get dressed and do the
look,
coffee? And go
yeah,
start the
look,
walk?
yeah, look, the record store lasted. There was few phase. I think we had 4 store, 5 store. The last store that I had at that point, I lived in London because I got after 10 years, I got bored of the store, and instead of selling, I said to my ex girlfriend Bettina Costanzo, aka Bougie Solitaire, aka uh, Costanzo from Mark Costanzo from Len, if you can steal my sunshine, Len.
Yes.
So that's the Constanzo connection. Bettina was my girlfriend by then, my ex-girlfriend. She went to live in London, and she started a record distribution company. And at some point, she kind of say, "I need help," and I was like, "I'm bored with the store." So instead of closing the store, I went to work with her, and I put a manager there, and I put this $10,000 in the account. I'm like, "Listen, when there's no more money, try to last as long as we can. When there's no more money, we'll close down." And like I went back 1 year later, and I saw the number because I was doing the buying from across, and I managed to keep direction, but I let my manager, DJ Excel, like run the show, and he did an amazing job because he took my formula and you kind of revived it because after 10 years, like I mean, I don't say people were tired of me, but like I mean, it's fresh. Like I let a record store at some point, like you cannot be 20 people in there anyway. So like the staff, I had partners, like, anyway, I had a couple partners, like, I bought them out, like, at that point, it was a good time. Like, I went to London, but when I came back, like, the store, like, I think it tripled. I think there was 30 grand in the bank account or something crazy. And it was like, okay, something's happening. And then that's when vinyl and everything, all the DJ culture was booming here too. And I was so happy because finally, after all those years of trying to kind of invest into that, and and like, you realize that at some point, when I started the store, most of the DJ were never buying their own music. They were buying for the clubs at budget. So it was a new thing for me to tell DJ, you need to have your own records. When you're going to own your own records and your own headphones and your own needles, you can go play parties. And that's the beginning of the warehouse scene and that's just pre-rave. So like all the DJs start buying music. So they bought music for the record store, for the clubs with the club's budget, which was, let's say, $150 a week, and they bought $100 a week for themselves. So suddenly I was selling way more records, and I think when I came back from that's it. When I came back from London, uh, I realized that, like, I mean, I had to move the store because my lease was over. I wanted to buy the building, it didn't happen, and I had to really make a choice. And I'm like, okay, like, we can make money. And then I opened this. Then I kind of tripled the size of the store. I brought it for the first time on a ground level, like big decor. We did, like, again, kind of a fat design statement. We won some design prizes for commercial environment, blah blah blah. Like, design. Like, I really the store was really cool. It was really very nice. Perfect again. Spacious, lot of space, listening booth, bunch of station, very central, very very well thought of. Big DJ booth, 3 turntable, CD, like crossover, like club sound system, and that was in and let's say that was in the 90s, 99. I did that. So, then it lasted another. The store was open for 21. So, every time, like, we change place, there's new staff, this and that. Like, it's always. I mean, I think at some point, uh, like, I feel lucky because Montreal was one of the last place that the record the record business went down in terms of, like, record store business. I was one of the last store that kept open, when everybody else closed. I mean, there was a couple of stores that weren't less DJ oriented that survived, that actually are still open. But no, but it was, look, at that point I didn't make money anyway. Like, the last, let's say, couple of years, we didn't make money anymore. I was already, you know, working on a bunch of other projects. I was very involved with fashion, and, like, music for fashion show, but advertising, and had my little recording studio that we made. I mean, the store, we sold like thousands of record a week. Like, we sold like the equivalent of almost $1 million worth of record per year back then. Like, for a couple of years, it was like every day there was buying music. I mean, that was the best time when I was buying music for 5 days a week.
I want to
Like,
visit
just
that for a moment. What was the big burst in Montreal that you remember? The big explosive energy moment where everyone was buying records and the music seemed to really start connecting with more than
there's
just
there's th- yeah, there's 3 moments. There's when I open and kind of reinvent the formula of record store a bit. That's something happened there because already it was the beginning of house music. Club business was already open. Uh, there was uh, there was uh, there was like Boulevard Saint Laurent was a bit bubbling. Downtown was dying out. There was all those little things opening. Like, I think, and like, we started to do parties. That the entire warehouse scene, party scene, like, that was one buzz. The other buzz, I call it post rave. When the rave happened and all that, obviously that created something because I had techno in the store, obviously. But at the same time, other record stores start opening, and I lost the kind of techno market. I always kept the techno market, but the buzz, the hype of the techno market, like, I lost it at some point when Tiga opened his record store because Tiga was shopping at my store, and then, before he was, well, Tiga was always Tiga. I mean, he was always as brilliant as it is today as an artist. Uh, but, like, yeah, that's it. So that was another moment. Let's say 89, 90, early rave 92. Eventually, I would say late 90s again, things got organized again. Uh, and it's always evolving. It's always been happening. It's always been evolving. People were buying music a lot in early 90s. I remember what I called the post rave is when all the rave kids that went to the rave, and at some point, there's the San Francisco movement with like, DJ Garth, guys like that playing really
The
more
Wicked Crew.
the Wicked Crew and Chicago, Derek Carter, Farina, John Howard. Those guys came for a party in Montreal, and the kids thought it was a rave, and they got there, and it was that. And the kids
What?
were like, but they're hype. So they got into it. The week after, the record store was ram with those rave kids, still looking like rave kids, wanting to buy anything that was called deep house. I could not keep anything like Chicago casual. I mean, people will tell you if you people still tell me about it because I used to get the record every time I get the record. The store was always packed. When I got the record, there was kind of I made sure that nobody touched the record until the wall was done. So I would get records. Everybody's there, smoking cigarettes, smoking a joint, having a beer, having lunch, eating sandwiches. Everybody's there at 12. I'm getting there at 12:30, 1, 2. I'm opening the boxes and I'm like pricing everything, and people are waiting, and we're putting record, and people are not allowed to touch the record until all the wall is put together. And when the wall is put together, because I want to kind of get a vibe that's going to be deep, then it goes there, then it goes there, then it goes there. That's a bit techno, that's enough ball, then it goes there, then it goes break beat, then it goes okay, acid jazz going to be there. Like I needed to see that and my madness. And whenever it was ready, I was like, I would be like, okay, race to the wall. I swear on my mom's head, it was like a movie. And the DJ booth, the counter was in the middle of the store, so there was people everywhere around, and I would just be playing music for 6 7 hours, mixing live, just mixing this, try this, and people would say, "Yeah, I want one, get one." I had one guy assisting me and one person at the cash. And the guy assisting me was just like putting record back on the wall, taking record back in the box, putting record on the side. And then sometimes, because I would be listening to the record live, sometimes I would be in my headphone, like looking for the cut. And sometimes I would find a cut and would play that cut and suddenly play the other side. And people would all of the record and say, "Oh, I want this record too." I would be like, "Hey, no, it's the B side." And often people would show up, even give me the record and say, "Play me the record." That was a thing. Play me records. I mean, Angel Moras, like, got coming to Montreal. He could not believe it. Like, he looked at this, and until I closed the store, Angel used to come see me and say, "Hey, play me a record." That means choose record for me, play me records. Play me a record that you think I'm going to like. And I developed that skill of knowing, you know, what to give to this guy, but not this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and kind of shaping their taste and shaping what they would play. And when somebody had a great job, or like being a great or play at a great party, I said, "You have to play this." It was not you should play this or listen to this. Do you like this? It was like you got to play this, and that was it. He had to play it, but it was kind of a circle where like like they got super high. They got like people. I mean, I lend my promo to people so they could play it out and get a buzz happening and stuff like and get DJs excited. I mean, when Mark Anthony, uh, I mean that's the other thing. Look, I was talking about the period, the post rave, after the rave period, and like the kids starting to buy a house. The next big thing is like playground. When in '86, I think '84 or '86. Sorry, '94 and '96 when when Playground opened, which was the first legal after hour in the longest time in Montreal. They changed the game. Patrick Legendre is the guy that like had the flash. He figured it out. Is like there's a loophole. There must be a loophole somewhere because back in the days, and he knew because we used to talk about it, me and him, and I was like, yeah, back in the days at Limelight in the 70s and 80s, they had a permit till 6 a.m., and so you went to the city, found out what type of permit it took, and like at some point, he put two, three permit together in a way where nobody could close him. So the cops showed up. He was like, well, I have this permit. And the cops didn't even know what to do about it. And that's how he got it. And eventually the city started giving those permits. That's how Sona opened after that area, after that Circus, Stereo, all those places. And Red Light, that's how all those after hour could open in Montreal. And it's the same thing. Playground was such a melting pot of like first time after hour, because it was basically the continuation of what I call the warehouse scene and the loft party scene. So suddenly you could go somewhere legit, bigger. And it was the same scene: club kids, after hour people, and gay crowd. The gay crowd that kind of like was stuck in clubs and hasn't been like raving so for so many years. And the rave scene didn't really caught up with the gay crowd. So for them, it was perfect. It was kind of raving under house music, and it's like it's kind of the same time that Junior Vasquez was like happening at Sound Factory a bit, like period in New York. So music was New York. I mean, there was so much music, right? You remember, like it was insane. So
Documentary called "Hang the DJ" was also, I guess, circulating in around that time that showcased a lot of that talent as well.
yeah,
In
Marco,
the in the
yeah, the boy.
party in the party chain, where does the record store fit?
What do you mean?
So I mean, like, I like to think of any night out or the scene as a puzzle. And everything's got a piece, an important piece. And if you take
Yeah.
a piece away, then you're not going to see the whole picture. So
Well, look,
that's why I was.
yeah, look, like the store was, I created a core. A lot of guys went to a store, like, obviously, like, there was a bit of a private, like, the store was on the second floor. I mean, like, the music was pretty, tuck, tuck, tuck. There was no top 10. I had no charts. I had no, Canadian pressing. I had like imports, like, I had weird stuff. I mean, we played very cutting edge stuff. Music rolled very fast. I mean, it was a lot of time. It was very intimidating, but we built a core of DJs, and all the key DJs. They're really kind of members, plus other. I mean, we're super welcoming. I mean, the classic is like a kid walks in, and I'm looking at the kid. I'm like, hey, start chatting with the kid, and the kid's like, oh, I like this, that, that. I would be the first one to take great record and give it to him. Another DJ would be like, hey, like, how come you didn't show it to me? And I'm like, well, because you know, sitting there, you want me to feed you? This kid is hungry. I'm feeding him. He's more interesting than you. I could be an asshole, like I would be challenging the guys. Like, how many times, guys, I told guys, be here between this time and this time, please. I kept stuff on the side, but please, because I keep a lot of stuff on the side, but whatever you don't want, I need to sell it. And my day to sell it is Friday. Like, and I know that other kids could, and I get it. Like, DJs, not every DJ. I mean, my average, the core of DJ were buying $250 worth of record every week. I mean, they're spending a lot of money. So like, I took care of them. And at the same time, it's funny because I mean, so those guys they were the key guys. So, I mean, we're selling music. Sometimes it took me about 12, 15. I think it took me at least 12 years to get to a point where it was beyond music, having a record store, taking notes and buying it, selling it whole. So at some point I decided to buy big quantities, 50 copies. So people would come, and then Saturday people would come, and Sunday people would come, and I would be like selling. So the other record store could not even, at that point, could not even compete, because by the time like they heard that great track, like when they order it, everybody got it. Because at some point, even the DJs, mobile DJs, and people that needed commercial or R&B or anything that I wasn't selling, uh, they would drop by the store. So and so everybody had like a lot of everything. Detroit, we had like I mean, I was buying straight from the artist. I mean, Roman Anthony, like, had everything 2 months, 3 months before everything was released anywhere. At same time that Tony was getting Tony Humphries and things, I mean, I was getting things, like Roman Tony was a good friend. Like, I ask him all the time, good music. I mean, we met in Montreal in the party, and you kind of click, and after that, like whenever, I needed something, contact, stuff like that, he would connect me with everybody, it's great. So like a lot of small label, weird little thing from Jersey or Detroit, Chicago, like you call people and I can, I can talk, so I could talk to people to say,
It's a blessing. You're a fantastic storyteller. I'm absolutely captured in everything that's happening right now. I literally feel like I'm immersed in the moments that you're talking about, and you would not know it because I was just I was much younger at the time. I mean, even though this is our first date right now, but
no.
I shopped at your store. Living in Toronto, I was well aware of what the store was, the legends of the store, what was about, and that if you went to Montreal and you were a DJ and you didn't shop at Inbeat, that was a little silly. So this is actually this is the part of the show where I like to take the guests and place them directly into the hot seat. And it's a tough moment right now. So are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. There's three records that you know and love. They're records that you will either use to rescue a dance floor in a time of need, or everything's going great, but you're going to use them because you know that they're just going to fucking work. These are your favorite records. They never leave your record crate. What are these three tracks?
It's a very difficult one, of course. In any genre, any style.
Any style records you know and love, you're going to put them on, and like I said, it's either a life preserver or it's an elevator. But in either instance, they are surefire.
This record that it's funny, like it's funny that you're talking about records. Music is very immaterial, and that's obviously an entire other issues. And as much as I adapted the digital format very fast, and never the computer. Funny enough, though, like for me, computer were always for email, for studio, not to bring in the DJ booth. I'm
I
totally.
chose vinyl specifically for the question with you tonight, Christian,
Yeah,
because typically I ask about, so I will say
yeah,
songs, but with you it's
yeah.
definitely records.
Thing too. The funny thing, are we good? Are we good? Is it breaking up? No.
It broke up. It broke up for a few moments for a second, but I've got you back.
Okay, hold on a second. Let's see what I can do with this. Let's see if I can. That might be better now.
Okay.
5G, baby.
5G baby. So three
Now we're
records.
in.
What are they?
Uh, there's a reason why I was talking about the different format, because you see, when you ask three records, it's pretty easy, right? Because like you have a visual memory, you have all those things. I'm always curious to see what's going to be the relation of the future generation, or future DJ generation with music, with old music. You see, I kept my record collection. It's a professional decision that I decided a long time ago, that I would curate a record collection and I would keep my record collection. And I'm still buying music physically, even if I never rarely play vinyl. I still like the format for various reasons. So I'm just very curious. So for me now, it's hard because obviously there's so much music, and and I could say any old music, obviously, because it's dear to your heart. And when you've been playing for over 40 years, like things that dear to your heart might not fit with what's it's today. But funny enough, I think there's records that still stand the test of time. And I would say like I can name one right away that I know that I've played on and on and on. It's a known record, but I'm not gonna play the obscure thing, but it's edgy. It's by Liquid Liquid. It's the Optimo track, the one that goes like with the cowbell at first, and goes into, and what's really interesting about that thing, it really capture a lot of the element of disco that was interesting. It has that kind of like, you know, post punk kind of vibe, and it's very kind of post disco New York, and it has that kind of like tribally thing because it's cowbell and chanting, and you know you don't really understand, and it's like, and it has an intro and outro, so you really can cut it. It's kind of almost kind of a hip hop party record, because you you never hear anybody mixing it, and anybody would mix that, I would think they're fucking lame. You don't mix this in and out. Like you play from the intro, you find a place to like drop it, and you let it play till the end because it's a very short track. But it's a track that it's never, people cannot say, oh yeah, like every generation, it's like it's a crazy. You listen to the record, it's a crazy record. Even today, like 35 years later, it's a crazy record. So that's one of them. Because he had that crazy energy. What else could I could say? Uh, that never leaves, like this stuff. Like I said, I'm always going through a revival, right? So like, you ask me the same question in 6 months, it's something else, and it's, like, what I'm saying. Like there's a pool of record, like it
Always a
depend of the period.
DJ. Always a
Yeah, that's it.
DJ. Favorite
Yeah, well,
favorite
that's it.
records, but are they transient in the nature of our feelings? Our feelings are
Well,
transient.
yeah, like, if you ask me, like, I've been like all through the winter, like I've been reviving a lot the kind of my kind of alternative days and my kind of like, uh, kind of dark wave and all that stuff. And then there's a great new wave record and from '88 that wasn't that fast. It was by Fingerprints, called Wet Job. It's very psychedelic, spoken word, and it's kind of guitar, and it's kind of a loop. The guy's going down, down, man, down, down, and it's kind of very proto. At the same time, it's very proto. It's proto house in some ways, even if it's not electronic at all, because it's just super repetitive, and the guy's talking with like huge Cockney accent, and mumbling. So, and it's just kind of guitar, but you know what? It sounds a bit like How Soon Is Now from The Smith. He has that kind of like, wavy guitar on top of it, like, but very dreamy, and it's not that catchy because the guy just says, "Wedge," like it's amazing record, but it's a record that capture every time I hear the record, every time I have shivers. It brings me back. It brings me back. Like it's really like I'm 17, I'm 18, like I'm 16. I'm going in those small clubs. It's very smoky,
The
and that
magic of
track
music.
playing. Yeah, like, everything is like, dark, black light, smoke machine, one strobe, just everybody's like, smoking cigarettes, sunglasses at night, of course, like hair shaved blonde, like, bleached, a big wedge, girls are like, high heels, everybody's like out, shoulder pads, that's the vibe, but it's a magic record that even today is like, wow, like you play it and it's like, wow. And there's a bunch of, what else? Uh, funny enough now, like obviously, like, we're reviving and reviving and reviving, we can revive anything, basically, but of course, like a lot of the early house stuff, a lot of the early house stuff is super relevant again, like anything that's super raw tracks, very badly recorded. Everything that's raw is super interesting for me. Like so, you know, some Madonna. I mean, there's one thing that's one record in particular, like that's few records. Let's say Denise Moto, I'm in Ecstasy. Super minimal record from Detroit. Uh, that on DJ International, The Children, Freedom, you know, I mean stuff like Run Trend Early, Alternate State, like it's just the magic record for me. There's a quality on all those records. I mean, with age, you realize what you like as a curator, as a DJ, And it's always certain vibes. And obviously, I like a lot of things. I like Latin. I always love Latin music. I could have said, Quatimundi, Mino Papai, or Kid Creole and Quatimundi, Mino Papai. It's like I play that from time to time. Every time I play that, it creates a commotion because music people are like, you're very daring. I'm a very daring DJ. Like, I mean, I'm not a dance floor DJ. I mean, by default, because that's the other thing. When you DJ in Montreal, every DJ of my generation in Montreal are very solid DJ technically. All of them. Like whatever they play, it didn't really matter. You needed to mix. Like everybody from 10 years younger to me than 10 years older, they're all like crazy DJs, like playing two songs for 5 minutes together. Montreal was always very, 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 very strong, ethical, technical on the technical side, and sometimes at the price of the music content. You would have DJ that played great technically but had no taste. Like I think, like, I learned. That's why, like, the fact that I stopped and I studied and I went to university and I did radio and I was writing, I became kind of more of a fan also and listened to music on the different perspective. In the record store, I guess it shaped my taste a lot too. And like, when I was doing fashion shows, that too changed. It was a game changer for me. I mean, playing in warehouse changed my life. Like listening to DJs in New York changed my life. Starting in Montreal, having Robert we met at Limelight changed my life. Hearing, Larry Levin in Paradise Garage, strangely enough, did not change my life. uh, the bunch of Larry was great. Paradise Garage was amazing, but it didn't change my life. John Gillibean Benitez at the Fun House and Louis Vega for the first time when he was playing freestyle. When I heard him there, I was like, wow, those guys, like, huge influence. Tony Humphries changed my life, definitely. Ron Hardy, you know, definitely it blew my mind. Because, like, imagine we're mid 80s, disco's over, we've been listening to new wave alternative music. I guess Toronto is a bit like synth pop, like it's all the same thing. Hip hop is happening a bit. And you go in those cities and they play disco and early house, like basically it's just drum machine. And you're like, what's happening? Like, first time I heard a house track, I thought it was a disco track. I was like, this is a dream. This is like a rough disco. Like, that's exactly what I thought. I was like, I can't mix this music. Because remember when alternative was there, it wasn't not about the mix anymore. Because you couldn't really mix. You could, but there was no space. Disco was made for DJs. Alternative and all that was based around sound. And then, or, hip hop, if you could play and scratch, but then house in 85, 86, it was like, okay, we can play again. We can become DJ. It was really DJ's music. It felt, I mean, that's why it's called DJ International and stuff like that. It was really DJ music. It's all that period anyway, super fascinating, because there's always that innocence. And it's funny, like, people refer to house as being a very, you know, I mean, it is a black thing, but you know what? It's amazing. It's black people reacting to white music. It's basically that. Because if you take out of the equation, let's say, the P Funk influence and stuff like that, and the disco influence, I mean, what were the pre-house classic? They were Italo, they were synth pop, they were kind of new romantic, they were experimental stuff, plus the New York disco stuff. But that's why, like, house never happened to New York. It happened in Chicago and Detroit because they had that record store again. I think it was Import Etc. And they were receiving import. And Italo was super big in Chicago, in all the black clubs, underground gay black clubs, Latino. Like, so house was kind of that mixed with that. I mean, so many classics are sampled from, kind of Euro, Italo, disco. I mean, not Euro dance, but, the European sound. So I always find it very fascinating. Like, in the same way that Kraftwerk was fascinated by Afrobeat, Fela, and James Brown. They were fascinated by those guys. They used to go in bars pre 80s and listening to that and going back to the studio and say, we have to make music with a groove, you know. Like, so that's how it started. That's how Kraftwerk started doing more rhythm tracks, because before Kraftwerk was kind of a prog rock, krautrock rock, whatever you want to call it, band. So I'm very fascinated. Like people always associate, yeah, house is black, but it's black people trying with what they had, very DIY, very, very brave, say, we'll do something, we're going to do something for us. I mean, not realizing they're doing it, too, and that's what's fabulous, and trying to emulate, you know, Italo and emulate white music, basically, you know. But they made it their own, they created this new genre that it's not a copy of, Italo or synth pop, So that's why that music's so important, and that's why those things are so relevant 35 years later. That's the reason why, like, again, like how much and that's another, I mean, it's like how much music there is now. I mean, I used to be able to tell you I know every single record that are out this week. I knew. I didn't buy all of them, but I heard about all of them. I knew I could say I know 90% of all the music getting released as 12-inch in electronic techno and everything, drum and bass. I know about it. I saw it on the list. I listened to it. I bought it for the store. I'm playing it as a DJ, one or the other, or all those together. Now, now I cannot do that in a day. I
No,
cannot
I'm not quite sure you'd be able to handle it in a week. Yeah,
in a
it's just
month.
yeah, no, impossible. If we
That's my
wanted
that's
to,
that, that's the biggest thing now for me. I think like that's the hardest thing is that, it's the hardest
do you have any?
from someone like me that used to be totally on top of everything and knowing and knowledgeable and everything. And now the funny thing is, like, you can play at a gig, and the kid that's dancing in front of you, or the girl, the guy, whoever, like everybody has remotely access to the same music you play remotely. I mean, obviously exception, or probably they know more because they just have that to do as a hobby. And me, I'm trying to do a bunch of other things as well. I mean, the focus music is a big part of my life, but like, not only what I'm gonna play tomorrow as a DJ, but like, what I can use in a fashion show, stuff like that. So like, I I mean, it's like wine, or like, when you get into those things, you get very like, now it's weird. Like, I like sometimes I'm like, it's a real effort for me to go play in a gig. It's like, okay, no, I cannot play this. That's too weird. Like it's, and especially now after almost 1 year and a half of confinement.
Do you have these moments captured? Do you have any mix sessions that you've recorded, like DJ sets? Do you have this where people can play it back right now?
Oh yeah, of course. I
Where
mean, like
where can
you
we
go.
go to listen to Christian Pronovost?
Oh, you go. Well, first of all, like since the past, I think since the past 20 years, I play under. I rarely play under the name of Christian Pronovost. I never play under that name. Actually, I change. It's just at some point, like I think I was in the late. There's a story around it, but the reason I adopted the name and where the name comes from, it's one thing. But I've been using the name Lost Heroes as an artist name since uh, late 90s. I think I started using it when I was in London because I was part of already kind of two generation of clubbing that my name was on the scene. So like I just thought that, like, people had a preconceived idea of what I'm playing because I was from, obviously, again, from disco to house, and then early house, and I played a bit of everything, but obviously very house centric and very New York. Yeah, so I was playing a lot of you know everything, Masters at Work, all that stuff. I was very more soulful, more the Latin thing, very musical. I could play classic disco or classic salsa in my set. Like I made it fit, but that was kind of my stamp. And those were the era of after hours and stuff like that. So like even when I was playing an after hour, at some point I needed to reinvent myself. And Lost Heroes was a concept that I started doing as a series of edits because I've been doing re-edits for the longest time. And like at some point, like we decide to, like, with technology, it was no more on tape because I've done the tape thing. And when my friend actually had like a computer, he brought his computer. He's like, we can do it in my computer. it was like, wow. And then, we could not do much with it because there was no CD and no format, but we used to bounce it on cassette, and they used to play on cassette. Anyway, so Lost Heroes was born from that. We released 4 records under the label Lost Heroes before I adopted the name. And I adopted the name just because I was in London and people were like, "Yeah, it's the guys from Lost Heroes." And obviously, like,
It made
with
sense for the branding.
yeah, and also like the name Christian is not bad in English, but Pronovost is very hard to. People have the tendency to say Provonost, Provon. Like my name used to be like massacred. So at some point it was Crispy, Christian P. I used the name at some point when I played jazz. My name was Jazzy Jones because I guess I I was really fascinated with the entire Soul to Soul sound system thing. I went to London. I went to their store. They had a store. They're selling fashion. They're selling their music. They had a bar. They had a cafe, and they're doing nights at the Africa Center. That was amazing. Like, and that's another thing that was super influential, like for me, to bring back acid jazz and like the entire rare groove and Soul to Soul thing was huge in Montreal. Huge, fantastic. Like that thing was like massive. We sold so many of that stuff.
So where can
So,
we hear the Lost Heroes music right now?
well, Lost Heroes, you have to go on the Mixcloud under Lost Heroes. I think Lost Heroes DJ Mix because there's 2, 3 Lost Heroes. Lost Heroes DJ Mix. Uh, you'll see on it like the past years. I've been posting the sets from a show because during the pandemic, I started doing a stream. I did a stream every Friday. I was doing a stream that I stopped for a month. I'm starting again. It was called Social This Dance, as this dance.
I'm with you.
So like I did that show for 6 months. I did it every week by myself, and I use it only. Uh, I, I use it as a. I mean, there's a guy that asked me to do a stream, and for me to get it to work with the OBS and this and that, I worked so much to like get it to work, and have something that I liked, as an image, that like after that I'm like, man, I've been working for 2 weeks to make this thing work. Okay, I'm starting to do stream, and I had no expectation. Musically, I knew that I didn't want it to be a DJ set. I wanted to be kind of introducing music and me playing music, and I knew people wouldn't really be dancing. So I said, I'm gonna play like everything that's kind of the world music, weird, ambient, down tempo stuff. I'm gonna start doing that like a night, and then playing a bit more this, a bit more that, a bit more Berlin, a bit more, you know, and kind of a little journey of 2, 3, 4 hours. But like at some point, it was like 6, 7, 8, 9 hours. So it was pretty mad. But I used it as like an exit for like the pressure, like all that stuff, like everything, the confinement, like so. I was in that schedule because if you produce a stream every week, and if you want to just introduce new music every week, you have to do a lot of research. So I was doing research 2 days a week. I was doing the day of the stream. I was doing stuff. I wanted the show to be visual and stuff like that. I mean, you can check on Twitch. There might be some shows still posted. Like I'm do all those psychedelic thing because, like, I thought I'm like, okay, it's very lo-fi, and it kind of brought me back when I was doing TV at school. So it was like kind of the same technique, very primitive, and like everything kind of turned out like looking like experimental, like 80s stuff, and the music kind of fit with that. And I started playing soundtrack stuff, and like I did that for 6 months. After that, I started inviting DJ, but even the DJ is fun because what's very interesting is the DJ like decided to kind of go to that format because I asked them, I'm like, well, it's not really a DJ thing. It's not really a house thing. You can play a house, but it's not really that. If you play a house, it has to be placed in a certain way with a certain perspective. So it makes it really relevant, edgy, and interesting. So everybody kind of played the game and people really prepare themselves. And all the DJ that plays, they're really like, I mean, they play for me. So everybody want to kind of make me discover stuff. So like it went crazy. Like people were really playing like, I mean, guys were like finding things, doing special edit, playing song that like they practice. They just finished in the studio. I mean, it got really interesting. So that changed. Like even now, like it's changed. I mean, I'm not interested into playing. I mean, I am, but like I need a place that I can play very wide and large. So if you go on the Mixcloud, you'll see there's a 6, 7 of them. But if you go lower than that, there's a bunch of other things. Like most of them are live from clubs. There's a couple sessions that are called Cults and Rituals. That are like radio shows, and that's kind of the blueprint of where it's all started. Because I did couple radio shows for people that they asked me to do it. And when I do a podcast and stuff like that, I like to do it live in a way where it's not broadcast live, but I really tape it as a live thing. I make an event in my head.
A
Okay, there's
lot like
people
what we're
coming in
doing
the
right now,
studio.
I think.
That's it. Like, you're coming, okay, this is what we're doing, like, and then, like, even if it's not live, I mean, it's that, and that's what I'm gonna give. So like, it put me in a situation like a club, like, and listening to music and not having the time to absorb everything and knowing that this. So you start playing and you just, even as you're listening, you're discovering music and it brings you in space that where you would end up, so I end up playing like from 65 BPM to 150 BPM without knowing, like, not that I intend, but like at some point I play something and it turns into a drum and bass thing, and you're like, oh, okay, but very tasteful, like, very fresh, not retro, like, not. I mean, if it's retro, it has to be fun, or it has to be like, it has to be, you have to feel like a certain visual that goes again with it, or like there's a vibe, I don't think, like, I don't believe in the retro thing. I believe in old music with a new perspective. Like, and that's why I keep telling, like I was telling you before, that when you choose a song, well, the stuff that's why, like, also my record collection. There's a bunch of things that I could say. You know what? Do I need $8, 8 huge bucks of masters at work? I, 8? I think I have 11 when I'm talking about. Do I need $11 as a masters at work? Do I need it? Like, I'm not playing any masters at work. None. It's not part of my scenario. It's not part of, like, I appreciate it, but I don't play any of it. I don't play. I barely played any. I played almost, like, I don't go on track source. I don't go on Beatport. I like, I don't know what I mean. I do go to see what's just to make sure that I'm right, that I'm not missing anything. And then when I'm like, yeah, it's fucking boring. I'm not missing anything. And every now and then there's great music, but that music will, like, I'll hear someone, like, I'll hear in a certain context or a radio show that, like, I know that I trust, and they play something, or I listen, like New Masters at Work. I did listen to it. I love it. The two New Masters at Work, the new one after 30 years. I think they're dope. I'm not playing that sound now, but I'll find a way to play it somewhere. Like, I love those tracks. I think they're like, it's fantastic. And I'll make sure that I find a couple songs that kind of I can go in there and come back, even if it's just a little detour, I'll do it because I think the music it's fantastic. It's everything that Masters at Work was, which was very naive and stuff like that. So, but it keeps changing. So, maybe in 2 years, like, I'll be into that sound, and I won't be into. It's always evolving. Like now, like, everything's a bit more alternative. Like, I mean, that's, like, I find that the music I like, it's more alternative. It's post house for me, like, with somewhere else, and it doesn't take anything away, or like it's post, deep, trancy and all that stuff. I mean, there's good music and everything. At some point, it's just what really stimulates you, like, and it changes all the time, and at the same time, I'm telling you that, but at the same time, I have every Moody Man. Every time he releases a record, I will get it, because I think it's unique. It's like, I mean, it's easy to say, oh, it makes me think of Prince. No, it doesn't make me think of Prince, but it's kind of the same thing. You just buy it. I'm part of that generation that's like, you just buy it because you know what? Maybe I'm not getting it now. Maybe it's just me. Like, I'm not getting it. It's fine. I'll get it at some point. And it's true. At some point, you hear it in another, you'll hear it in a set, like, whoever, like, a techno guy at Deck Mental will play it, and you'll be like, holy shit, that's he fucking played that Moody Man track.
It
You're like,
goes that
and
way
then
with records sometimes. It takes somebody else to play it for it to really resonate with you.
I'm always and I'll always be a fan. I'm a fan of a lot of DJs. I'm a fan of a lot of producer. I'm a fan of people that I work with in the studio. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of. I'm just a fan. I accept. I want to be. I want to get excited by music. If I hear something that I want, I need to have it. I mean, I'll find it. I'll pick up the phone, text message. I'll make sure that I'll find it. I'll find it. I mean, like obviously, like I have access to a lot of things, but even then, like I'm not. I don't care. Like anyway, it's the entire like promo thing doesn't exist anymore. It's not even relevant. Like who cares if you play a. There's so much music that's out that I play that's been out for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. It makes sense. It's also the way you play, obviously, and how you play and the way you play, and and uh, and I guess like the entire alternative thing that I'm into now. It's kind of a counterbalance to the fact that like I've been doing a couple of projects on regular. Like I've been doing a disco thing for like 5 years now called Mundo Disco, and uh, and that's uh, and that's an event I'm doing, and that's kind of me going back on the gay scene, with Pride Montreal, and it's one of the main events during Pride. So we've been doing that, and we're doing a couple events. The goal is to do tour, where four DJs, but there's like two or three that are more like playing actively a role, and me either I play. I mean, I'm playing most of the time, but like I'm not more into, but I'm into the concept, the visual, the this, the that, blah, blah. Like I'm as much as into that. So Mundo Disco has been very specific. It's disco from 78 to 82, the period 78 to 82, which we can argue if it's disco or not, or it's the limits. It's very electronic. It's can be campy, can be limit, not good, can be a bit cheap. It can be very kind of can be divine. It can be Bobby Orlando stuff like that. It can be very gay. Like anthems of back in the days, and it can be very electronic. It can be very Giorgio Moroder. It can be very space. It's kind of it's entire thing. In between. When disco was like kind of electronic, has a certain energy. So that's Mando Disco. So I guess for me, kind of to counterbalance, I need to do other thing and try other stuff, and the house stuff. I mean, there's always good stuff, like there's always very interesting. There's great producer, there's great stuff. I mean, after that, it's just a matter: do you want to play that? Do you have time to play it? And you play less. No, but I play less in clubs in general. I mean, obviously, we haven't played for the longest time, but I play less. I play on project. I play to Mondo Disco. I'll play to a this. I'll play in fashion. I'll play. I'll do opening, closing. I'll do like special thing. Like I've done a show with Giorgio Moroder. I can do a show with like another special guest, like stuff like that. Opening for blah blah blah. So like just also it's the time. I'd love to play I'd love to play every week. I'd love to have a residency in a small place I could play every week, but it's not the way it works anymore. Just because anyway the job, like you need to do something with that music. It's the cruel thing is that I'm looking at my record collection, and I'm not even thinking about like the digital record collection, just the record, and I'm keep curating them, because I moved the studio during the pandemic, and moved the 20, I don't know, 22, 24, I don't know, 25,000, I don't know, like there's a lot of records, so, and I changed configuration, and like I make everything A to Z. Obviously, like it's very precise to what I want, etc., etc. And but like I went through every record, and I looked and listened to almost everything for 1 year and a half, even if it's back. I listened, and many of them I did listen, and I discovered music that would blow anybody's mind. I have few friends of mine that are like heavy collectors and curators that have been doing the journey with me, of listening to my collection, because A, they're super curious because they have a record collection and they know that I have a good one, and B, just because they're fascinated with how music. I mean, I had a record store, so there's so many things I was getting that, like the Manchester thing, that you know this from the Merck thing, Romantoni unreleased. I have a bunch of things, like there's so many things that we had, and also we were doing acetate back in those days, plus the promo, plus the this, the that, unreleased. So I have all those records that even the I was telling you the rave days. I have a bunch of things that I was getting in promo that got in box, and I sold a bunch of it, but I did listen to everything that I thought was interesting. I kept. Like there's a bunch of weird Moby record. I never played any Moby records, and back when it was big, but I had a bunch of promo, double pack, triple pack, and there's so many crazy things that I found by Moby and by like under those label. Insane, weird, broken beat, break beat stuff. I mean, acid house, like, and everything that's cool now. I have the craziest record now. So all those records I could have sold 10 years ago because it's like piano roll and break beat. Like who cares? Like this year, everything's like break beat. Like it's big revival. Not that I would play a lot of it, but it gives you a sense of what's happening now, like in a real perspective of what's happening now. And it's always and it's the artwork. Records, it's like the artwork. It's like the 12 inches, like white label, you write something on it. It's like the drink that you drop on the record that's like all messed up. I mean, I have record that I still play that I have since the late 70s, and I still play them, like Hamilton Bohan and Let's Start the Dance. I still have my original copy that's I've been playing in every club. You're
Easily
asking
one
me
of the
like,
greatest house music records. That is house music. I'm calling it house music. I think it's
yeah,
house music.
of
Yes.
course it's house
Yeah,
music.
it's fucking
Of
amazing.
course.
You're
Yeah,
an
but see a record
incredible
like
storyteller. I'm like absolutely captured. I feel like I'm not quite sure in this episode if we've even gotten in all of it. I'm wondering. I'm wondering. Like, is there a chapter two? There's potentially probably a chapter three. I'm not quite sure. But one thing I am sure is that I'm absolutely and I'm very happy we were able to connect. I'm very happy that we were
good.
able to do
It's
this
amazing,
together.
man.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
been
man.
wonderful listening to everything that you've had to say. Giant perspective. Um, as we're wrapping up our episode right now, I want to say that it sounds like an incredible adventure. This musical journey that you've been upon, as well as the contributions to Montreal.
Yeah,
Wow.
this like look, yeah, like every story, people talk about, and of course, I did play a role. I'm not gonna. I hate false like humility and stuff like that. Like I realize I know what I've done. Like and a lot of things that I've done, like I've done it very consciently. Like pushing the DJ culture, pushing the music. I mean, pushing artists, blah blah blah. Like everything I've touched, like I kind of try to push the envelope and and I have a standard. I mean, it's a natural thing for me. It's like it's not that I wanted, like I never wanted to do anything, but I wanted to give opportunities to other people. So just to say that I didn't do that alone. Like there was a lot of us. There was the store, but there was like so many DJs around me that did it for me. I mean, so many people that and also people that challenged me to be better. Like in because like I was look, I was like young, I was like full of myself. I think I probably had a pretty big ego. uh, I mean, the record store really like cut that. Like I had to be more humble. I had to serve DJs. I couldn't. Of course, like I mean, sure, I knew like I knew that I was a decent. I knew I was a fairly good DJ, and I knew that I could do the job. So for me, it was always that. I always use that. Like I know that like I know that at time like at time I was really at time I was quite an asshole with a lot of people, but like I hope that like it motivated people too, and then give opportunity to people and push people to be better, and it was always that. Like I've done it. I kind of had that educator type of vibe,
Is that
going on. Even
asshole or is it tough love?
it's tough love,
Tough love.
but it can be perceived as, in the same way that, so like I'm not alone all along that journey. Like, at the store, well, after 6 7 years, I was pretty much, I don't think I would have been able to sustain it without the team coming in, and then the client, and then it's the same thing with clubs. I don't think without the people supporting me, and there was a couple of very instrumental people all through my career and following me all those years and helping me and being assistant and being promoter and being agent and acting as agent and a babysitter, like I have to give credit to all those people, and even now people that still hire me, and everybody that took a chance on me. Because like as much as I have a very kind of credible reputation. I'm always a wild card, because I'm somebody that refused to play safe. So you never really, but like, I take the night wherever I take the night. I drive, I decide. I mean, people, if people want to play with me, great. If a crowd doesn't want to play with me, they're gonna have a very bad time with me. Like I'm not gonna be generous. I'm just gonna do what I have to do. So I'm not, no, I'm not, I'm like you said, like I'm more a guy that plays for people that are either very curious or very educated. So
Which is perfect. So if you right now watching or listening on the podcast should feel like you're in a situation where you want to go ahead and get some exploration, then a great place to start would be the Mixcloud for Lost Heroes, also known as Christian Pronovost. And thank you so much for joining us tonight, doing the show with us, being here, contributing,
that was
sharing.
amazing. That was amazing. I hope, yeah, like
Oh, thank you.
let's complete another subject.
You know what? I'd love to have a second date with you. I'm actually headed
Sure.
into Montreal. I think like for the first 2 weeks of July, and so it
Well,
maybe we should do this where maybe face to face. Get some brown liquor
yeah,
going. Roll up
let's
some
connect. You come,
cigarettes.
come to the studio gladly. Come to the house. Come to the studio. We'll hang out gladly, no problem. And like we'll find a day, a couple hours, or a full night if you want, whatever.
All
Like
right,
it's all
don't
good.
touch your
We'll
Skype.
make it happen.
Don't touch your Skype right now. All of you at home, in the car, on your players, smartphones, wherever you might be streaming or podcasting at, thank you so fucking much. You are absolutely awesome sauce. Do everything that we need to make the room go boom. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Ah! And we will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.